What if America was never colonized? I know, you've heard this what if tossed around like a stone dorm room debate. But today, we're not stopping at the cliché. No, Columbus never sailed the ocean blue, roll credits. Nope. We're diving deep into what really could have happened if the Americas had been left alone. And spoiler alert, it's a hell of a lot more fascinating than the Disney version of history you got in school. And here's the kicker. The best part of this alternate history isn't what didn't happen, it's what could have happened. Because spoiler, native civilizations were not primitive. They were thriving, complex, and in some ways way ahead of Europe. Yeah, you heard me. So buckle up. We're about to unpack an America that might have been stronger, wealthier, and maybe even more futuristic than the Europe that discovered it. Part 1. The world before colonization. Let's set the stage. Before Europeans showed up with guns, germs, and greed, the Americas weren't some empty wilderness waiting to be civilized. That's colonial propaganda. The Aztecs built cities bigger than London. Tenochtitlan? That place had causeways, aqueducts, and a population rivaling European capitals. The Incas? They ran a mountain empire spanning thousands of miles without the wheel, but with roads so good they're still visible today. And the Mississippian mound builders? They had massive trade networks stretching across the continent. In other words, if Europe never showed up, we're not talking about teepees and feathers. We're talking about indigenous empires competing like Europe's France, Spain, and England. Except, without the bubonic plague ruining everything. Mini-hook. So what would these civilizations look like a few hundred years later? Think skyscrapers made of stone, democracy without colonialism, and tech that might have leapfrogged Europe altogether. Part 2. Who would run the superpowers? Here's where it gets juicy. No colonization means no United States, no Canada, no Brazil. Instead, picture a North America divided between giant indigenous superpowers. The Mississippians might have dominated the central continent. The Iroquois Confederacy? Already a democratic alliance before Europeans even dreamed of independence. Down south, the Inca might have expanded into a pan-Indian superstate. And while Europe was busy fighting over kings and churches, these American empires could have been running advanced trade systems, inventing unique technologies, and shaping global culture. Contrarian twist. We think colonization gave the world progress. In reality, colonization stalled native progress by wiping out 90% of populations. Without that catastrophe, the Americas might have been the birthplace of innovations we now associate with Europe. Industrial revolutions, medicine, even democracy. Part 3. The domino effect on global history. Okay, here's where your mind should explode. Without America, Europe doesn't get its sugar, silver, and gold addiction. No free labor from enslaved Africans. No financial rocket fuel for capitalism. That means, no British Empire as we know it. No French global dominance. Honestly, maybe no industrial revolution, at least not in the 18th century. Europe might have been stuck squabbling in its own backyard while America thrived independently. And let's not forget Africa. Without the transatlantic slave trade, entire African kingdoms would have evolved differently. That's a whole other video, but just know colonization didn't just shape America, it reshaped half the planet. Mini-hook. So what would global power look like today? Honestly, the phrase "made in America" might mean something completely different. Part 4. Culture, religion, and language. Here's the spicy part. Without colonization, English wouldn't be the global language. Spanish wouldn't dominate Latin America. Instead, you'd probably have Nahuatl, Quechua, and hundreds of indigenous languages thriving, and maybe even merging into lingua francas of superstates. Religion? Forget Christianity being exported across the Americas. You'd have rich indigenous spiritual systems influencing global philosophy. Imagine if instead of Vatican trips, pilgrims were visiting Machu Picchu or Cahokia for spiritual enlightenment. And cuisine? No fusion tacos, sure, but corn, potatoes, tomatoes, and chocolate would still have spread worldwide eventually, just through trade. In fact, the world might have adopted them earlier and with more respect.